All right. Now, Dallas, you have been a part of the fabric and the framework of SDH ever since the Triumph came online. Let me ask you this. When it comes to the last 12 months being a professional footballer, what has the last 12 months been like for you?
Whew. The last 12 months has been a lot of this, what you and I are doing, Zoom. We found ourselves in preseason 2020 about, we were probably 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in when everything got shut down and it turned into isolation, quarantine, Zoom workouts, Zoom meetings with coaches. Progressed from that to small groups where it was, groups of 2, 3, 4. And that's how we prepared for the 2020 season was small groups. I think we were only able to be a full team in training sessions for maybe 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the 2020 season. So a lot of adversities, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of having to adapt. But you look at the 2020 season and Greenville Triumph were probably the best to do it, to handle it all, and to make some of those things work in our favor. You look at the last 12 months, we're in preseason 2021 now, coming back as the champions, and we're still wearing our masks. We're still getting weekly COVID tests. We're still practicing protocols. So, I think we're used to it at this point, but at the same time, as players, you just got to get the job done no matter what the adversity is, and we're able to do that. And I think the good thing about this year is you are starting to see things open up, and we're going to get more fans in the stands as things progress. And hopefully COVID is less of an issue, but we're hopefully light at the end of the tunnel. But it's been an interesting last year.
What'd you learn about yourself that you didn't know before?
Oh, I probably learned that I'm a better cook than I originally thought. A lot more eating in. I joke that the people at Trader Joe's on Woodruff should know exactly who I am by now, because I'm in there far more frequently than I used to be getting groceries and cooking. But I think like anybody in the last year, you pick up some hobbies, or you start finding out a little bit more about yourself because life was different. You had to adjust. So I think everyone pivoted a little bit, went down different avenues they maybe normally wouldn't have, because life can get kind of routine, and the routine was broken for a lot of people with what happened last year. So interesting time in both good and bad ways, but I like to think I've made the most of it for sure.
Dallas Jaye and $2 Chuck hanging out together over at Trader Joe's. I know that a lot of folks who watched their favorite team play last season, obviously a lot of it was done from home until the end and things like that. How difficult was it to be an athlete in that kind of an environment where you're just playing? I mean, it's, if you're watching a game, you might have sound piped in. If you're watching from home, you're out there by yourselves, basically in ghost towns of stadia. I mean, what was that experience like?
It was, it was difficult. I think you see it now, especially in the last few days in world football and soccer with the Super League in Europe and the fans' reaction to it. Like this game is for the fans. It's special because of the fans. And you go out and you play some of these matches behind closed doors. And, we do it in preseason all the time. And it's just that it's preseason. It's a practice match. So when the game, points are on the line and you're playing meaningful matches and you don't have those fans there, it takes away just some of that environment, that atmosphere that, makes you realize why we really do this and who we really do it for. So it was difficult in that aspect. Something you had to kind of rise above, and home games became less of an advantage because you don't have that 12th man or that supporters group there. That can be that lift that you need when it's the 85th minute and you're up 1-0 and you need to hold on to get the victory. So less fun, but job that had to be done, and I know we are looking forward. It was great. We were able to open things up a bit last year. I think we had 3 or 4 matches behind closed doors at home, and then we're able to open it up. And this year, I think we're starting at a smaller capacity, but the hope is to, by the end of the year, be back to that full legacy 4,000, and really get to enjoy having the community out.
How does it feel to be referred to as a champion?
Oh, it's a pretty incredible feeling. First time in my professional career. I had been fortunate with Phoenix Rising in 2018 to make it to the final. We had lost to Louisville City that year. Fortunate with Greenville Triumph in 2019 to make it to the final that year, and unfortunately lost that year. So for me, it was kind of that third bite at the apple that to finally get to lift the trophy, and claim a championship title as a pro. I mean, guys can have great professional careers, long careers, and never get that opportunity. So to have that happen is great. I think as players, you want to have that short-term memory that we're keeping that in 2020, and in 2021, it's just an opportunity to get to do it again.
Okay, so we'll get to 2021 in just a sec, but did you get a rock? Did you get a championship ring? And what special did you get any alone time with the trophy? What happened after?
We currently no jewelry, but we have been sized. So I anticipate one on the way. I don't know when. I don't know what it'll look like. I do know if our jerseys are any indication of what some of our front office can do with creativity, we're going to be in great shape when it comes to some of these rings. Because I know Doug Irwin and some of his staff in the front office, they do an incredible job with some of that stuff. So we're looking forward to those. And with the trophy, we got to schlep it around town for a couple days after the final, which was awesome. Got to take some great pictures with it. My girlfriend was in town for what would have been final, what ended up being just a celebration of the championship. So pictures that'll last a lifetime from that. And now I believe the trophy is somewhere in our downtown storefront. So we don't see it on the everyday, which I kind of like. Keep it out of sight for the players. We got stuff to accomplish, but every now and then it pops up at an appearance we'll be doing or something like that. And when you see it again after not seeing it for a while, it's like, all right, yeah, there it is. We earned that.
Dallas Jaye, keeper of the Greenville Triumph, hanging out with us here on Soccer Down Here. Now, when you're getting into this season, league's a little different. There's growth that's involved, and I know that you guys on the whole are pretty much just ready to get to the point. It's like, let's just get out there and start playing. I mean, how itchy are the guys right now?
Oh, I mean, we're if we had to wait another week, I don't know how we'd manage it. I think the staff did a great job in building us up to this point where it's like we're ready to be let out of the gate. Played Charlotte this past weekend, which was a great friendly against a good championship side. Game got a little feisty at times, which I think for both teams it was like, we're ready to do this for real now. So you go from training sessions where you're all just kicking each other to you get an opponent like a Charlotte or some of the other teams we played this preseason, you get to kick someone else. And but now to have points on the line this upcoming week, and we've had to sit and watch other teams play the last 2 weekends. The first weekend with Fort Lauderdale and New England 2. This past weekend there were a few teams that played, Richmond included. So I think fortunate for us, we get a free look at them before we go up there this weekend. But having to sit back and watch when you've been that team the last 2 years who's played the first game of the season hasn't been ideal. So we're itching for it. We're ready to get out there.
And you guys got your reps against Charlotte up in USL Championship. Tormenta got some reps against CF Montreal and came out with a win. And I think that it speaks a lot to how things are progressing in League One with you guys there in Greenville and with the league in general, where a lot of folks would sit there who don't know about USL League One, and they sit there and it's like, oh, it's USL League One, and they'll say something disparaging about it. And then you get a result that's a positive result for the USL League One team. And then that kind of puts folks on their heels a little bit, where they're learning about the quality of play in USL League One. And sometimes as a fan of the other team, you learn about it the hard way.
Absolutely. I think this preseason especially has been a great indication of how close the U.S. soccer pyramid, the levels are becoming. You see it with player movement, up and down, all from MLS to League One and everywhere in between. You look at the results this preseason, just from a League One standpoint. You mentioned the Tormenta in Montreal result. We played DC United, drew 1-1. You have a Union Omaha team that goes down to Phoenix and beats them twice in a few days' time. The team that was in the championship for USL Championship. So to have you see the results, you see the competitive nature between these teams, and yes, it is preseason, but it's definitely an indication of the growth of League One and also the growth of the championship. I think everything's just starting to continue to rise here in the U.S. soccer landscape, which is fantastic. We need more of it, and it's a cool thing as a player to be a part of now.
All right. When you look at yourself on tape, or when you're analyzing yourself from practice or driving home in the car, and you sit there and say, practice today drove me crazy. What do you think you still need to work on to improve as a keeper?
Oh, there's I think, I'm fortunate to be at a club where you have a John Hartz, you have an Alex Blackburn, a Rick Wright, or our technical staff, where we break down film. We're constantly analyzing ways where we can improve. We champions of 2020, and there's still areas across the board where we think we can be better, continue to raise the bar. Myself personally, as a goalkeeper, Alex and I had Alex Blackburn, our goalkeeper coach, we had in-depth conversations about the 2020 season, strengths, weaknesses. And for me, one of the areas I really wanted to improve in coming in 2021 was command of my box in terms of aerial balls, coming for corners, coming for crosses, taking some of that pressure off the back line, who I'm fortunate does we got some big boys back there who will win headers and do that job. But if I can, make their jobs easier in that sense, always want to improve with my feet. You see the way the game's going in world football, goalkeepers are far more involved in building up the attack. So always see myself improving in that aspect. How can I get better? What can I add to the toolbox, if you will? We 16 games last year, 9 clean sheets. I think something maybe 11, 12, 13 goals against, something like that. But we pride ourselves in our defensive effort. So we want to improve those numbers this year. We want to improve the goals against average, the amount of clean sheets, all those things. So we got work to do for sure.
All right. 2 questions about what you got into here. First question, how difficult is it to be in more command in the box, to be more vocal, to almost change your personality to where that you have to be different, but you were a certain way? How difficult is it to change who you are as a personality in the box?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to kind of navigate. It takes that conscious effort, and it starts in training. There will be days where I will have things I want to work on, and I feel like I really nail it, and it's like, okay, great, that's improving. And there are other days where you try to work on something, you're like, this just doesn't feel right. This is taking me away from what I normally am able to succeed at. So it's that fine line, that hybrid, that balance of not getting too outside of yourself and the things that have worked and continue to work for you, but also adapting and growing as the team needs you to. So, for me, I like to think off the field, I'm a pretty relaxed guy, pretty chilled out, not that loud, aggressive, boisterous type of person, but on the field, it's required. It's part of the job. So, something I'm still growing into, and I'm fortunate where our whole back line are all returning guys, a couple new additions, and they'll give us some great depth. But relationships I have where you kind of know how to operate with each one, who sometimes needs a kick in the rear to get them going, or someone who maybe needs an arm around the shoulder, and that's how they respond. So I think it's unique to kind of navigate each guy's personality. How can you help them most? And John's big on that, because as the coach, that's what he deals with every day, is how do I deal with each individual player in the right way? So that trickles down to us as players. And for me as a goalkeeper, it's a skill that I definitely want to improve on and continue helping our team with.
And at the same time, the sweeper keeper, where that you're going to have to be You're going to have to venture out a little more in some systems, like we're seeing this season in Atlanta, specifically with Brad Gazan, Rocco Rios Novo, where you know that you're going to have to be aggressive, come out of the area, be out there 20, 25 yards out, be that sweeper keeper, make sure that your distribution with your feet is what it's supposed to be in a new system. What about that and being comfortable with distributing with not just throwing the 90-mile-an-hour fastball out at a 45-degree angle and getting everything going in transition, but being there with your feet as well?
Right. Yeah. No, I one of the things that Alex Blackburn and I spoke about at the end of last season was something we saw more of a strength of mine during the season, which was a big help to the team, was the ability to be high off my line, stay connected to the back four, and kind of play that sweeper keeper role whenever we would find ourselves maybe getting beat over the top. Can clear up a lot of danger, put out a lot of fires in that way, helps the team in a big way. So something we're continuing to tweak and work on and continue with. And then in terms of the distribution, playing with your feet, I know I'm not going to be the guy getting the assist or making the game and breaking down the opponent. My job is to put it at the feet of players who can do that, and we have a ton of them, which we're fortunate with that. But it's the little things of playing the center back on his correct foot, so maybe he can play in one touch as opposed to two, and we could speed the game up. Or it's playing a ball with the right message into one of our center mids, so he knows exactly where the next pass is going to go without having to even really look. So little nuances to it that we continue to see, and you live by the sword, die by the sword when it comes to playing out of the back. So you'll see it in the biggest leagues, biggest clubs, best players in the world. They still make mistakes trying to play out of the back and connect passes. So it happens, but the teams who can play through those moments and know the right times to do it, I think, are the ones that can really succeed at it. And that's something we're definitely focused on this season.
Dallas Jaye, man between the sticks for Greenville Triumph. Thanks for being our first foray into USL League One and catching up with everything that is going on in and around the league. Figure we start with the champs, start with the guy between the sticks. Dallas, always great to catch up with you. Thanks for being a part of SDH.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time.
Welcome back. USL League One block continuing. John, always cool to hear from Dallas.
Yeah, and, to be able to kind of, as we've talked to him over the years, to see how his game has continued to develop and see where he's comfortable with his game, knowing that he's got a lot more that he wants to work on, and getting into the aspects of that, and what a championship has meant to Greenville in the most difficult year that you could have for chasing after a trophy, and all of the things about what it's meant this entire year, and learning all that stuff and getting ready for finally games that mean something, where you get to play Charlotte Independence, but you're learning about yourself, and games get chippy and things like that. But now you're ready for games that mean something, involved with points in the League One table, and it's always good to catch up with Dallas. And Dallas is a good sport when it comes to me going sideways with questions too, and that's always a plus.
So USL League One, it is the third division. You can watch everything there on ESPN Plus. There will be a couple games on the ESPN networks this year for the first time when it comes to League One, which is very cool. The season is 3 games in. New England Revolution 2 and Fort Lauderdale CF each have a win and a loss. Richmond has a big 3-0 win over New England from last weekend. South Georgia Tormenta lost the home opener to Fort Lauderdale last weekend. If you're new to the league, Greenville are your defending champs. They had the best regular season in 2020. Didn't get to have the final because of a COVID outbreak with Union Omaha. But 11 wins, and what jumped out to me looking back at it, John, is 8 of them were 1-goal wins. And your goalkeeper, Dallas Jaye, being the Golden Glove Award winner back-to-back years, is a huge part of that. But this is a team with a lot of fight.
And, very stout defensively. And when Dallas got into it a little bit in the interview, talking about having veteran guys in front of him and being in that rhythm that you need, where you've got a lot of close games, a league that's predicated really with a competition across the board. And when you can rely on guys in front of you and act as a unit, especially when it's a 1-0, a 2-1, you're having to get those games that are always going to be down to bitter end, and having guys in front of you that you can implicitly trust. It's big for John Harkes and that system there in Greenville to get these results. And, something happens, the guys up front will get that goal for you, and you get out of there with 3 points. And I think it speaks a lot to the veteran presence that they have, the togetherness that they have, the roster being as intact as it's been over the last handful of years, and just continuing to operate as that one unit for the success of the Greenville Triumph.
Alex Morrell's been the highlight going forward for this team for a couple of years. First team All-League last year. Most assists in the league, tied for that lead with 6. Created the third most chances with 32. Good on the dribble, 27 successful dribbles last year. 5 goals. 5 goals, 6 assists in a short season. Good year for Alex Morrell. Greenville should be one of the favorites, I think, to retain their title. You got to look at Union Omaha as well, who they make their debut in 2021. This weekend, they host Tormenta Saturday at 7 o'clock. Also, Greenville heads to Richmond Saturday at 6:30. North Texas hosting Fort Lauderdale at 8:30. Again, all on ESPN+. Let's talk about Omaha. They did upgrade. They brought most of their players back, but they added a couple of pieces too, including one of the leading scorers in the league, Greg Hurst from Chattanooga.
Yeah, and for anyone who watched last year, you knew really how much of an important cog Hurst was for the Red Wolves as they were under a first-year head coach in Jimmy Obleda. And it's about adding those pieces that you think you need to get to that next step. And Union Omaha, not messing around, bringing in a scoring talent in USL League One, thinks that, you're looking at pieces to get you to the next step in the process. And for Union Omaha, that means playing in the last game of the year and winning the last game of the year.
4 players were on the all-league team from Omaha. The Owls were led by Jay Mims, their manager. They have one of the best logos in American soccer as well. Ethan Vanacore-Decker was the standout to me. He's a really good player that I think is a top player at this division and could potentially move up a division, get into the second division here later in his career.
Yeah, and, you once again, for those that might remember NPSL action a couple of seasons back, Elma Infor was at Asheville. Then he was at Lansing in League One and has now found a home in Omaha for Union Omaha. And so we saw how Elma's game has progressed. And he's another one of those guys that I'm looking for just to continue to see how his game continues to grow and the impact that he can have in that roster too.
So let's move over to Richmond. They had the big win last weekend. Player of the week, Juan Pablo Monticelli. Clear Audio is your presenting sponsor of the League One Player of the Week. 3-0 win on the road at Gillette Stadium against New England. He is one of their defenders, but he got their second goal. Strong performance in the clean sheet. Joint most tackles in the match, second most among teammates in clearances, possessions gained. He came over from Orlando City B, where he played 14 of 15 games last year, was one of their top defenders. He's 23. He's also spent some time in the academies of FC Dallas and with Tijuana. Richmond feels like after, I think they struggled in the USL Championship. Maybe the amount of resources needed were a little bit too much for where they were at the time. They dropped down to League One and they've reorganized. And I think going back to something Dallas Jaye said, the gap between the levels, between Championship and League One, is not as big as it used to be. And it's because League One has started and grown so fast. Richmond is, I think, a prime example of what you'll see in USL from time to time is a club finding the appropriate level and finding the appropriate resources. They feel like a team to keep an eye on this year.
And if you're gravitating toward offense, obviously you want to keep an eye on somebody like Emiliano Terzaghi, who was big for them last year. Can he continue to have the output that he had in 2020 and 2021? And here's your piece of trivia for Richmond. Austin Causey was signed to a deal for Richmond Kickers, and it was more than a quarter of a century after his father won U.S. Open Cup for Richmond as well. So, and I just thought that, as you were getting into this season, I thought that was just one of those cool things about how soccer can be circular sometimes. And so when you have a second generation player coming to the fore for Richmond and Austin Causey, I thought that was cool. Just a little something to file away into your trivia notes for USL League One this season.
Yeah, the Kickers were the USL champs in 95. They were the Open Cup champs in 95. A bunch of players from that 95 Kickers team moved into DC United's roster initially. Jeff Causey was one of those. Richie Williams was another. Bunch of movement between the Kickers and DC in those early days. It's cool to see the Kickers starting to put it back together. They're one of the legacy clubs in USL, along with Charleston, who have been around since 93, and they've just got so much history attached to them. They've added a couple of Argentines as well that I'll be curious to see, Hernan Gonzalez and Zaka Moran. They've been busy adding new faces in Richmond, and Darren Sawatsky is another kind of lifer in the game here in the U.S. He played for New England at the early stages of MLS, bounced around the league a little bit. Was up in the Pacific Northwest as a part of the Sounders organization before coming over to Richmond last year. They're one to watch. KFC shouting out North Carolina FC, moving down a level. Again, I think you're going to see more of this as the levels get solidified. I do think over time, and USL's talked about it, Jake Edwards, president of the overall organization, has talked about it, I do think they can have a promotion relegation system between the championship and League One soon. Not yet. I mean, League One's a couple years old. Give it time. Let it flesh out. Let those teams get solidified before you start to throw them into that situation. USL did ProRel years ago, and it failed spectacularly because teams weren't established. Let these teams get good and established. There's no rush. It's not something you have to do tomorrow or everything's going to fall apart. I think the league is growing in the right way. But Bernd asked the question before we move on, what's the difference in budget level between the two and salary level? I don't know the breakdown exactly in salary, and I honestly haven't seen an updated speculation on where things fall between League One and Championship in terms of overall budget. In 19, when everything was getting started, in 2020 it's changed it, so we could be having a completely different conversation after what we all went through last year. But in general, it was about 3 to 5 times larger in the championship than it was in League One. League One, you could do at around $1 million a year in terms of your spending for the year. Some obviously are going to spend more than that. Some maybe a little less, but not a ton less. Championship, you get some teams that are up in that 5, some all the way up to $10 million budget. You have a wider spectrum, I think, in Championship than you do in League One. But League One would have been further along if you didn't have a pandemic. I wonder how soon it will take for them to be able to justify spending $2, $3, up to $5 million a year. You got to have the revenue coming in to back that up at some point.
And I think, if I remember correctly, I think even the licensing fee, just to be a partner in the dance for League One versus the Championship, I think is at least a 3 or 4 multiplier when it comes to just getting into the party. I think that you're paying $1/4 right now for license just to get a license to be in the door at League One level than you would at the USL Championship, just to give you an idea when it comes to the budget disparities. Even the licensing disparity puts you right there, looking at a 3 or a 4 multiplier.
Yeah, and the idea, and I know it's different for a lot of people, worldwide. If you're watching this and you're like, what are we talking about having to pay to get in the door, and licensing fees, expansion fees, what have you. The idea here in this country is because the game has had failures over the years, and quite a few, and large ones. The USL has structured its way to try to guarantee that teams aren't going to come and go. And that has evolved over the last 10 to 12 years. Honestly, when the NASL broke away, USL looked itself in the mirror and said, we need to change the way we do business. And they've done a great job since then. You do have failures. You still do. Lansing was a big failure. Lansing was a big mistake. Rushed into something you probably didn't need to in that first year in League One. Reno is an unfortunate one. I think the pandemic had a huge effect there, and just some of the changes USL has gone through in terms of growing. If League One was further along, maybe Reno could have dropped down and survived. That's still going to happen. But you have those kinds of fees almost as a filter, in my mind, to make sure people are serious. Now, what I hope that we see from USL is the continued growth in what they offer from the league side. I hope they continue to invest in academies. I hope they continue to invest in academy cups and highlighting players and player development. I hope that they continue to offer more from the league side in terms of support for teams, sponsorship sales, communication support, all the broadcast stuff. I hope it continues to grow so it's not just a fee going in. Nobody's getting rich off of running USL these days. That's not happening. But you need to see more of that return continue to grow as those fees go up, which is, I think, a reasonable expectation.
And if anyone missed it, I would recommend going back into our library on the app or your favorite podcatcher and listen to the discussion that we had in our preseason roundtable with Mike Kelleher of the Charleston Battery, Doug Irwin, the chief branding officer and VP in Greenville, and Darren Van Tassel, the owner and president of South Georgia Tormenta. And they got into what it's like for them and what it was like for them over the last 12 months and trying to grow. And Doug specifically got into the notion of the growth of League One and rivalries and things like that, and the possibility of other cities, and really making this a regional power when it comes to what you can see and what soccer can mean to a lot of different parts of the geography here in the U.S. So just to kind of get the lay of the land when it comes to League One and the USL Championship, go back and listen to that conversation that we had. It was a real eye opener, and it was great to hear their perspectives about where League One has grown from to where it is now, and how the championship integrates in all of that, and how both leagues want to move together in this whole process.
Again, schedule for League One this weekend: Richmond hosting Greenville Saturday at 6:30, Union Omaha hosting South Georgia Tormenta Saturday at 7, North Texas SC hosting Fort Lauderdale CF Saturday at 8:30. All of those are available on ESPN+. The first weekend with 3 games. You've played 3 games already, and it's really starting to ramp up now with the defending champs, the runners-up, in action this weekend. Every Tuesday in the 11 o'clock hour of the live SDH show, we'll have our USL League One block. Still needs a name. We'll take suggestions. There can only be one is on the table, and that might end up getting the name slot. But this will happen every Tuesday in the 11 o'clock hour live. It'll also go out as a podcast, so if you're listening to this at another time, you can join us on Tuesdays, chime in the 11 o'clock hour. You can join the conversation on Twitch, in the Twitch pitch on the chat. You can also listen on our app live in that 11 o'clock hour. But thanks for being with us for our first USL League One. There will only be one.